Okay, you know that feeling. You grab your phone, maybe just to check one quick thing.
Uh,
And then suddenly, like 20 minutes have vanished.
yeah.
You've been scrolling
hmm
through what you barely even know.
Oh, totally. That thumb just keeps moving, doesn't it? And the
Right.
screen just keeps feeding you. Well, more stuff.
Exactly. It's the endless scroll. We've all been there.
Absolutely. That constant stream of updates, pictures, videos, it can feel like this black hole just sucking up your attention.
Yeah.
So today we thought we'd really dig into that. Why is it so captivating, this endless scrolling?
Yeah.
And what's it, actually doing to our minds?
Right. And we've looked at some really interesting material here. Stuff that covers the psychology, sure, but also even the philosophy behind this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this habit everyone seems to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not just about killing time. So our mission for this deep dive, really, is to get a handle on why we get sucked in, what the downsides are.
And crucially, give you some actual practical things you can maybe try to get a bit more control back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because look, the internet, it's essential now, right? We can't just ditch it.
Not realistically, no. It's how we work, learn, connect.
But the way we interact with these endless feeds, that has a huge impact.
Definitely. So let's start there. That initial pull, what makes the infinite scroll almost magnetic?
Okay, yeah, let's get into that. Why is it so hard to just stop? Well, first off, the design of these platforms,
Mhm.
it's not an accident.
Not at all. That smooth, continuous flow of content, the infinite scroll, it was specifically engineered to keep us engaged for as long as possible.
Engineered how, though? What's the mechanism?
Well, what's really fascinating is how it plugs directly into a really basic part of our brain wiring. It's called the dopaminergic reward system.
The dopamine, okay? Heard of that. The pleasure chemical.
Sort of, yeah. Pleasure, motivation, reward. And every time something new pops up on that feed, a new headline, a cool photo, whatever, your brain gets a tiny little squirt of dopamine.
Like a little treat.
Exactly, a little reward hit. And historically, new information was good. It meant, finding food or avoiding danger, survival stuff.
Ah, okay. So our brains are wired to seek novelty.
Precisely. And the infinite scroll just hijacks that. It gives us constant, easy novelty without much effort, little dopamine hits again and again.
So it builds this loop, this expectation.
A highly addictive feedback loop, yeah. The brain learns scroll is a quick little reward.
Right, okay. And it feels like you're always thinking, maybe the next post will be the really good one. Is that part of it?
That's absolutely key. That's the concept of variable reward. It sounds technical, but it just means the interesting post is unpredictable.
Okay.
Think about a slot machine in Vegas. Right?
Wow.
You don't win every single time you pull the lever. If you did, it'd get boring fast.
That's true.
But the possibility that the next pull might be the jackpot,
Mm-hmm.
that's what keeps you glued to it.
Ah, I see. So the endless scroll is like a digital slot machine.
In a way, yeah. You don't know if the next swipe will reveal something amazing or funny or important, or just more junk, but that may be.
That maybe keeps you swiping.
Exactly. It's called intermittent reinforcement in psychology. It makes habits incredibly sticky and hard to break, much more so than predictable rewards.
Wow. Okay, so there's a powerful biological hook. But I don't know, sometimes I scroll just to kind of zone out. It doesn't even feel like seeking a reward, more like escape.
That's another huge piece of the puzzle, absolutely. Scrolling is such an easy, readily available escape hatch from the present moment.
Yeah.
Feeling stressed? Scroll. Bored, waiting in line? Scroll. Got some uncomfortable thoughts bubbling up.
Scroll, yeah. It's an instant distraction.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of funny, isn't it? This urge to avoid just being still.
Yeah.
I read this quote somewhere from Blaise Pascal, centuries ago.
Oh, yeah.
He said something like, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
Yeah, that hits hard, doesn't it? Especially now.
Right. So this discomfort with just being with our own thoughts, it's not new. But how do our phones make it worse or different?
Well, Pascal nailed that fundamental discomfort way back then. But now, the escape route is literally always in our pocket. It's instant.
Right, always on.
So we never really have to sit with that discomfort if we don't want to. We don't develop that muscle, that ability to just be quiet, to reflect, because the scroll offers this constant alternative.
Like the path of least resistance is always just pick up the phone.
Exactly. But it goes even deeper than just distraction, like you were hinting at. It gets tied up with our emotions, too.
How so?
Well, for a lot of us, scrolling can actually become a form of emotional regulation. Or maybe attempted emotional regulation.
Okay, what do you mean?
When uncomfortable feelings pop up, loneliness, anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, reaching for the phone, diving into that feed, it can feel like it's soothing those emotions, temporarily at least.
Huh. So the phone becomes
Mm-hmm.
like an emotional pacifier.
That's a really good way to put it, yeah. A digital pacifier. We're reaching for comfort, for relief in that stream of content.
But you said attempted regulation, so it
Yeah.
doesn't really work long term.
Well, that's the thing. It might provide a brief distraction, a moment of feeling less bad, which is a kind of avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
But true emotional regulation means actually processing feelings, figuring out how to cope with them constructively. Scrolling just papers over them.
Right. It pushes them down, maybe.
Exactly. The brain gets that short-term dip into stress, maybe, but the underlying issue, it's still there. And you can end up relying on scrolling whenever you feel bad.
That makes a lot of sense. And then there's the other big one, FOMO, fear of missing out.
Oh, absolutely. FOMO is huge fuel for the scrolling fire.
It feels like you have to keep checking just in case something important happens or everyone's talking about something.
Right. It taps into our basic human need to belong, to be part of the group, and social comparison, too.
How does that work?
Well, you see these curated highlight reels of everyone else's lives.
Yeah, the perfect vacation pics, the job promotions.
Exactly. And it can trigger that nagging feeling that your life isn't as exciting, that you're somehow falling behind or missing out.
Mm-hmm.
So scrolling becomes a way to try and keep up, to ease that anxiety by constantly checking, making sure you're not being left out of whatever the collective thing
The
is.
algorithms probably make it worse, right?
Yeah.
Showing you the stuff most likely to get a reaction.
They absolutely can amplify it, yeah. They often prioritize stuff that sparks strong emotions, including envy or that fear of missing out.
It makes me think about something broader. This idea from Eric Fronthen. He wrote this book, To Have or to Be.
Ah, yes. Great book.
And he talked about society shifting towards focusing on having things, on consuming, rather than just being present, experiencing life.
Mm-hmm.
And the endless scroll feels like a perfect example of that, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
it? We're just constantly accumulating bits of content, images, headlines, fleeting impressions.
That's collecting digital trinkets instead of engaging deeply.
Yeah. Instead of engaging with the real world, or even like Pascal said, with ourselves. And you mentioned something earlier, a spiritual thirst. What do you mean by that?
It's this thought that maybe, just maybe, this constant chasing of stimulation online, this endless scrolling, maybe it's partly a misdirected search for something deeper.
Deeper how?
Like a craving for real meaning, genuine connection, a sense of purpose, things that fleeting digital interactions often don't really satisfy.
So we're scrolling, trying to fill some kind of inner emptiness.
It's a possibility worth considering, that this constant looking outward into the digital world might be trying subconsciously to fill an inward void, a thirst for something more substantial.
Wow, that really gives you pause. Because, okay, we see the downsides, we feel that pull.
Yeah.
But then, like we said, just quitting the internet, that's not really an option for most people.
Exactly. And that's the core dilemma, isn't it? The internet is tangled up in everything we do.
Work, school, keeping up with family, paying bills, getting news.
All of it. Essential services, social connections. So just saying log off completely, it's just not practical for almost anyone.
So the challenge isn't about ditching the tool entirely. It's about changing our relationship with it,
Yeah.
especially with these endless content streams.
That's it, exactly. I like the analogy of fire.
Ah.
Fire is amazing, right? Essential. Cooking, warmth, industry. But leave it unchecked.
Disaster. Burns
Yeah.
everything down.
Right. Infinite content is kind of like that. It holds immense potential for good learning, connection, entertainment. But if we don't manage it, if we don't approach it mindfully,
It can just overwhelm us,
But
burn up our
still-
time and attention.
consume us. Yeah.
That's a really helpful way to think about it. It's
Yeah.
not that the internet or the scroll is inherently evil. It's about how we use this incredibly powerful and, let's be honest, often deliberately addictive tool.
Exactly. And it's also important to remember, if you find yourself scrolling endlessly sometimes, it's not some personal failing or weakness.
Yeah.
It's often a very human response to tools that are designed very effectively to grab and hold our attention, sometimes overriding our better judgment or our natural instincts for things like focus or moderation.
That's actually kind of reassuring to hear.
It's about understanding the forces at play.
Mhm.
So the big question then becomes, how do we start to regain some of that control? How do we manage the fire?
Okay, yeah, let's get practical. The good news is there are things we can do. We've pulled together like 5 key strategies.
Great. What's the first one?
Digital boundaries. Setting up some actual limits.
Okay, crucial first step. What does that look like in practice?
Well, it could mean using the app timers that are built into most phones now, setting a limit for how long you spend on certain apps each day.
Like only 30 minutes on Instagram or whatever?
Exactly. Or using things like focus modes or do not disturb during work hours or when you need to concentrate.
Right, blocking out the noise.
And also creating actual phone-free times or zones. Like maybe the phone doesn't come to the dinner table. Or maybe you plug it in outside the bedroom an hour before sleep.
Yeah, or deciding not to check it first thing in the morning, giving yourself some space before the deluge starts.
Right. It's about intentionally creating these pockets where the scroll just isn't physically available or tempting.
Makes sense. Boundary setting. What's next?
Strategy number 2 is about being more mindful while scrolling or even before you start. It's called mindful scrolling.
Okay, interesting. How does that work?
It's about taking just a brief pause before you open that feed, before you start the swipe, and asking yourself, okay, why am I doing this right now? What am I actually hoping to feel?
Digging into the motivation.
Yeah. Are you genuinely looking for specific information? Are you trying to connect with someone? Or are you just feeling bored, anxious, lonely, and looking for a quick distraction?
Right, identifying that underlying need or emotion.
Because once you know why you're reaching for it, you might realize, oh, scrolling actually isn't the best way to meet this need right now.
And maybe you can choose something else instead.
Exactly. It brings some intention back into the moment.
I like that. Pause and ask why. Okay, strategy 3.
Replace, don't just remove.
Okay, this sounds important for actually breaking the habit.
Yeah, because just deleting the apps, sometimes that works, but often the urge is still there, right? You just find another way to scratch the itch.
True. Or you just reinstall them a day later.
Exactly. So the idea here is, instead of leaving a vacuum, actively think about what you can replace that scrolling time with.
So have an alternative ready.
Right. If you usually scroll when you're bored, what else could you do? Maybe keep a book handy, put on a podcast or some music, go for a quick walk, do a crossword.
Or if you scroll to de-stress, maybe try 5 minutes of deep breathing instead. Or journaling.
Precisely. Find healthier activities that actually address the underlying need that scrolling was, poorly trying to fill. Got it. Have a replacement plan. Smart. What's number 4?
This one's interesting. Digital Sabbaths.
Okay, like a day of rest, but from tech?
Basically, yeah. Intentionally setting aside a regular period, maybe it's 1 day a week, maybe just an afternoon, where you consciously minimize your engagement with non-essential digital stuff.
Non-essential meaning, not work email maybe, but social media, news feeds, endless browsing.
Exactly. Whatever feels like the noise for you. The aim is to give your nervous system a break from that constant stimulation.
A chance to recover, recharge.
Yeah, and to reconnect with things offline. Maybe spend time in nature, hang out with family, work on a hobby. Whatever helps you feel more present and less frazzled.
Allows for some deeper thought, too, probably, without the constant interruptions.
For sure. A regular digital detox, essentially.
Okay, digital Sabbaths. And the final strategy, number 5.
This one is about being intentional with what you consume online. Curate. Don't just consume.
Taking control of the input. Exactly. Instead of passively letting the algorithms feed you whatever they think will keep you hooked, be deliberate about who you follow and what content you actually engage with.
So like Marie Kondoing your feed.
Yeah, kind of. Ask yourself, does this account, this creator, this publication, does it actually add value to my life? Does it inspire me? Teach me something useful? Make me laugh in a good way?
Or does it consistently make me feel anxious, envious, angry, drained?
Right. And if it's the latter, don't be afraid to hit unfollow or mute or unsubscribe. Be ruthless about protecting your mental space.
It's so true. What you feed your mind really matters. The content you consume shapes your thoughts, your mood.
Absolutely. You have the power to curate a digital environment that supports your well-being rather than undermines it.
Choose your inputs wisely.
Okay, so those are 5 solid strategies: boundaries, mindful scrolling, replace, don't remove, digital Sabbaths, and curate, don't consume.
That's a really practical toolkit.
Yeah, hopefully gives people some things to try. So, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, it feels pretty clear that this endless scrolling thing, it's way more than just a feature on an app.
Oh, definitely. It touches on some really fundamental parts of being human, doesn't it? Our curiosity, our desire to escape discomfort, that deeper search for connection and meaning.
Yeah, all tangled up in this technology.
But the crucial thing to remember, I think, is that you still have agency. You still have choice in how you engage with it.
Mm-hmm. There's that great quote from Alan Watts.
Mm.
He said, "You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago."
I love that, and it applies perfectly here.
Totally. You're not obligated to keep scrolling just because you were scrolling 5 minutes ago. You can choose differently in the very next moment.
Yeah. So maybe consider this conversation, this deep dive, as a prompt, a moment to just pause. Not just pause this, but pause and reflect on your own relationship with these endless streams of content.
Yeah, think about it honestly. What does your scrolling actually look like? When do you do it? How does it make you feel, really?
And maybe ask yourself, what's one small intentional step you could take, maybe even today, to reclaim just a little bit more of your attention, a little bit more of your time?
Your mind, really, your moments.
Exactly. It's about that conscious choice sometimes to maybe scroll inward for a bit, towards stillness, towards intention, towards presence, instead of always scrolling outward into that vast, often overwhelming digital noise.